Hi, Matchmaker Maria. My name is Lauren. I'm 26 and live in Washington, D.C. My question for you is about speed dating. What are some good things to talk about in the 3 to 4 minutes on each date, and how do you get those conversations started? Thank you.
I feel like that's such a great question for you because you operate an app where first impressions via video um, are just so important. If someone doesn't like what they're seeing, they'll just maybe go to the next video streamer.
Mhm.
So what do based on that now, what what is successful for video streamers on your app that she could then utilize in speed dating, which I assume is also through an app right now?
Right, right. So I think the most important thing about speed dating is just really to figure out, what you want to highlight in that date. And so what I think is kind of wasted time almost is when you go through almost the niceties of like, hey, what's up, and like that kind of, that's fine. But I think if you jump in with a like, more fun question, like, where's your favorite place you've ever traveled to? You kind of can better dive into those interests. And so actually, on our app, so if you're the streamer and you open an X date round, we actually give question prompts to try to help move the conversation, because it is hard. It is hard to figure out, with the brand new person might be hard to figure out what exactly you want to talk about. So we do
Right.
help give some prompts. But I've seen travel be especially good, because that's something that, especially right now when no one's able to really travel,
Right.
it takes them into like, kind of like a happier place. And then just, what foods do you like? I like, kind of doing the more situational, like, what would you want to do on a date? To kind of get at like, is it movies? Is it a restaurant? And so kind of just trying to get to know the person in that way, make sure your interests are aligned. Because the way that I think about video dating and really using apps in general is how do you kind of pre-screen and pre-filter this other person so that you don't waste your time with who you're meeting in person.
Right.
And so I think so it's kind of actually interesting about, obviously this time we're in is we're obviously in a pandemic, and so video dating became much more popular. And that idea of pre-screening, originally partially you want to do it just because you don't want to risk you don't want to risk further contagion. You don't want to risk meeting with people during a pandemic that could be sick. You want to limit that, but it also is just helpful for seeing if there's a personality match and some chemistry there. And so I think trying to find those questions of what's most important to you, like, do you love traveling? Then that's what you should be asking about on the speed date. That's where you should kind of gear the conversation. If fitness is really important to you, maybe ask, hey, have you ever ran a marathon? Are you thinking about doing it? Basically trying to find what are the most important things to you, and then throwing them at the other person to make sure that the conversation that you have is the conversation you want to have.
Right. That's really good advice. I have a few ideas too, but to kind of piggyback off what you said really quick, the one thing I would say is especially with the travel question, we have to remember that, we're all living, if you're single, you're living a single life, and the person that you're talking to is also living a single life. And that doesn't mean, like, maybe if you really are interested in travel and you have at least 40 stamps in your passport, which is fantastic. And the person doesn't, he's only been to one or two countries. That doesn't mean that he doesn't like travel. It could also mean that he just didn't have someone to travel with. So,
True.
I'm always nervous with, if you're going to ask the travel questions, just don't, just ask more about. I feel like travel questions can be better when they're asked a little bit even more specifically, like, when you travel, are
Mhm.
you more interested in laying by the beach? Or do you like checking out the city, living in an Airbnb and, being
Right.
a
Or
local? And
and
that
that's
could
fair.
just
Do
tell
you
you
like
so
hiking,
much more.
or yeah.
Right. Yeah. That could tell you just so much more about the person than anything else. Other prompts I love are, what are your 3 bucket list items? Now, I get when you're speed dating, there is this pressure to, like, let me tell you about my basics. And I would get, like you said, I would get rid of the hellos, and, it's like, okay, 2 things you should probably know about me. I live in this neighborhood, I suppose. And, I work in finance. I'm just giving an example.
Mhm.
And, but my bucket list items include, visiting every national park before I die.
Right.
You know, my resolution, I plan to read at least 12 books this year. Do you have any what's your favorite book that you've, last read? And by the way, if you are a book reader and they're not a book reader, that's also, that could tell you a lot right now, especially if you're both single during a pandemic and you don't have kids. It's like, oh, you don't read books. Well, do you at least do a good Netflix binge,
Right. I think,
So.
yeah, though I do want to, caution, like, because I think that this is one of the things that where a lot of people don't necessarily know what they want.
Right.
Or rather, you might think of something as a disqualifier, like if you're just making a list of things that you want, but isn't necessarily. So like, for instance, I'm a huge bookworm, love to read. My husband of course reads, but it's not the same types of books. Like that's not, one of our shared things that we do, just because it's, we have all these other things that we're both interested in. And so I think it's important to figure out, what actually is that real, if you want to ask a question that you would consider a deal breaker, like make sure it's an actual deal breaker, because,
right.
There's so many, common interests, like you said, like, oh, if they're not reading books and you're, then maybe there's something else. Maybe they decide to teach themselves how to play piano or something like that. That's,
right.
That you could also be really interested in, even if it's not currently a shared interest.
That's exactly, like, you can definitely, as couples, you tend to grow together and you might have parallel interests, but that doesn't mean that they're 100% shared. Or you can learn, hey, I play tennis and you don't, but maybe he one day picks up a racket after a couple of years, just like maybe I'll pick up a golf club. I don't know.
Right.
You have to give that flexibility for a relationship to grow in.